The illuminated screen of Jessica Parker's phone cast a glow on her tired face as her fingers, trembling slightly, composed the message. "I can't do this anymore. The baby is coming, and I'm all alone." Before second thoughts could creep in, she hit send, then tossed her phone onto the passenger seat. The relentless late October rain beat against her windshield as she navigated the shadowy Boston streets, each contraction intensifying more than the last. Jessica was 28, single, and on the cusp of motherhood. The baby's father had vanished months earlier, leaving her with nothing but hollow promises and a shattered heart. Unbeknownst to Jessica, caught in the throes of panic and pain, she had mistakenly sent the message to the wrong Michael. Instead of reaching her unreliable ex-boyfriend, Michael Donovan, the desperate text had landed on the phone of Michael Blackwood, the imposing CEO of Blackwood Publishing, her employer. She had saved his contact information following a company-wide email regarding quarterly objectives, never imagining she would inadvertently contact him during such a vulnerable moment. Michael Blackwood was in his penthouse, reviewing quarterly reports, when his phone buzzed. The 40-year-old executive frowned at the unfamiliar number and the alarming message. He recognized the name. Jessica Parker, a promising editor who had joined the company 8 months prior. Michael had noted her keen editing skills and dedication, but had exchanged fewer than a dozen words with her in person. He was completely unaware of her pregnancy, let alone the fact that she was about to give birth. He stared at the message, unsure of how to respond, or even if he should. Meanwhile, Jessica pulled into the hospital parking lot, just as another contraction seized her, nearly folding her over the steering wheel. She grabbed her hastily packed overnight bag and hurried through the downpour toward the emergency entrance, not bothering to check if her ex had responded. It was futile to expect anything. She had given up on Michael Donovan months ago. The hospital staff swiftly guided Jessica to the maternity ward, her labor progressing rapidly for a first-time mother. Between contractions, she managed to provide the intake nurse with her information. "Emergency contact?" the nurse inquired. Jessica hesitated. Her parents were in Arizona, not arriving until the next day. Her closest friend was honeymooning overseas. "There's no one," Jessica confessed, tears mingling with sweat on her face. The nurse offered a sympathetic pat on the shoulder and continued with the admission process. Back in his penthouse, Michael Blackwood couldn't shake the troubling message from his mind. The raw desperation in those few words weighed on him. As the CEO of a company with over 300 employees, he took pride in maintaining a professional distance. However, this situation felt different. It wasn't a work matter. This was a human being in distress. After 20 minutes of internal debate, he texted back, "Is everything all right? Do you need help?" When no response came, his concern intensified. Acting on a hunch, Michael called his assistant, Vanessa, who was working late. "Vanessa, what can you tell me about Jessica Parker from the editing department?" "Bright young editor, highly recommended from Berkeley Publishing. Keeps to herself mostly, but her work is exceptional," Vanessa replied. "Why do you ask?" "Is she pregnant?" Michael asked bluntly. There was a pause on the line. "Yes, actually. I believe she's due very soon. People have been quietly collecting for a baby gift. Is there a problem?" Michael explained the mysterious text. "I think she might have sent it to me by mistake, but I'm concerned." "She mentioned being alone and the baby coming. That doesn't sound good." Vanessa agreed. "Should I try calling her?" "No, I'll handle it," Michael said, already grabbing his keys. "Send me a list of hospitals within 20 miles of the office. If she's in labor, she's likely at one of them." As Michael drove through the rain-slicked streets, Jessica was enduring the final arduous stages of labor. After 6 grueling hours, the cry of a healthy baby girl resonated through the delivery room. "She's perfect," the doctor announced, gently placing the squirming newborn on Jessica's chest. Exhausted but overflowing with love, Jessica gazed into her daughter's face. "Hello, Lily," she whispered, the name she had chosen months prior. While Jessica was meeting her daughter for the first time, Michael Blackwood was at the 4th hospital on his list, Boston Memorial. "I'm trying to find information about a Jessica Parker," he told the receptionist. "She's an employee of mine, and I received a concerning message suggesting she might be in labor." The receptionist checked her computer. "Yes, Miss Parker was admitted earlier this evening. She's in the maternity ward." She glanced up at Michael with a smile. "Congratulations. It appears she delivered a healthy baby girl about 30 minutes ago." Michael blinked in surprise. "Thank you, but I'm not—" He stopped himself. "What room is she in?" "Room 304, but visiting hours are over except for immediate family," the receptionist said. Michael straightened his tie. "I'm her emergency contact," he lied smoothly. The receptionist nodded and buzzed him through. Standing outside room 304, Michael hesitated. What was he doing there? This woman was practically a stranger. He had overstepped professional boundaries and inserted himself into an intensely personal situation. He was about to turn away when he heard a soft cry from inside the room. Not a baby's cry, but a woman's muffled sob. Without further deliberation, Michael knocked gently on the door. After a moment, a tired voice called, "Come in." Jessica looked up, expecting a nurse, and froze in astonishment when Michael Blackwood entered her hospital room. Her hair was disheveled, her face pale with exhaustion, and her eyes were red from crying. The baby was asleep in a clear bassinet beside her bed. "Mr. Blackwood?" Jessica's voice was barely audible. "What are you doing here?" Michael stood awkwardly by the door. "You sent me a text earlier. I think it was meant for someone else, but I was concerned when you didn't respond." Jessica's eyes widened as realization dawned. "Oh my God," she whispered, mortification flooding her. "I'm so sorry. I meant to text my ex." "I figured as much," Michael said gently. "Are you all right? Is there someone I can call for you?" Jessica looked away, embarrassment giving way to another wave of sadness. "No, there's no one. My parents are flying in tomorrow, but—" Her voice trailed off. An uncomfortable silence filled the room until a small whimper came from the bassinet. Jessica reached for her daughter, wincing slightly from the movement. "May I?" Michael asked, gesturing towards the bassinet. After Jessica's surprised nod, he carefully lifted the newborn and handed her to her mother. The tenderness in his movements was unexpected from a man known for his ruthless business acumen. "She's beautiful," Michael said softly. "What's her name?" "Lily," Jessica replied, watching her boss with confusion. "Lily Grace Parker." Michael nodded, seeming to make a decision. "Miss Parker, Jessica, I know this is unusual, but would you allow me to help? Not as your employer, but as someone who—" He paused, searching for the right words. "As someone who believes no one should be alone at a time like this." Jessica stared at him, trying to reconcile this compassionate man with the intimidating CEO she had glimpsed from afar. Before she could respond, a nurse entered the room. "Oh, you must be the father," the nurse said cheerfully to Michael. "The hospital needs some information for the birth certificate." Jessica opened her mouth to correct the misunderstanding, but Michael caught her eye with a look that somehow conveyed both question and reassurance. In that moment, something shifted between them. An unspoken agreement, a bridge across the chasm of their different lives. Neither of them could have predicted how that mistaken text would change everything, setting in motion events that would intertwine their lives in ways neither had imagined possible. The following morning, Jessica woke to the soft sounds of her daughter's breathing. For a moment, she wondered if Michael Blackwood's unexpected visit had been a dream, a bizarre hallucination brought on by exhaustion and hormones. But then she noticed the large arrangement of pink and white flowers on the windowsill that hadn't been there before, along with a small teddy bear wearing a T-shirt that read, "Welcome to the world, Lily." The card simply said, "Call if you need anything, MB," followed by a personal cell phone number. Jessica sank back against her pillows, mortification washing over her once more. Of all the people to accidentally text during labor, she had messaged the formidable CEO of Blackwood Publishing, a man known for his exacting standards and cool demeanor. She had only interacted with him directly once, during her initial interview, when he had unexpectedly stepped in to ask a few pointed questions about her editorial philosophy. Since then, she had admired him from afar, impressed by his business acumen and the respect he commanded. Her phone buzzed with a text from her parents. Their flight would land in 3 hours. Jessica felt a wave of relief, knowing they would be with her soon, helping her navigate these first overwhelming days of motherhood. She hadn't told them about Michael Donovan's abandonment, instead letting them believe the relationship had simply fizzled out. The truth was too painful, too humiliating to share. That he had coldly informed her he wasn't father material and suggested taking care of the problem before disappearing from her life completely. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. A nurse entered, followed by Dr. Warner, who had delivered Lily. "Good morning, new mama," Dr. Warner said warmly. "How are you feeling today?" "Sore, tired, overwhelmed," Jessica admitted, "but good." Dr. Warner checked Jessica's vital signs and examined the incision from the emergency C-section they had performed when Lily's heart rate had suddenly dropped during the final stages of labor. "Everything looks good, but I'm a bit concerned about your blood pressure. It's still elevated," Dr. Warner said. "I'd like to keep you an extra day for monitoring, just to be safe." Jessica nodded, trying to hide her anxiety. Another day in the hospital meant additional costs her insurance might not cover, but her daughter's health came first. "Your husband seemed very concerned last night," the doctor continued. "He asked about postpartum care and what to expect in these first weeks. It's wonderful to see such an involved father." Jessica opened her mouth to correct the misunderstanding, but hesitated. The thought of explaining the complicated truth was exhausting. Before she could respond, her phone rang, her mother calling from a taxi from the airport. After the doctor left, Jessica tried to feed Lily, struggling to get her to latch properly. Tears of frustration streamed down her face when another knock came at the door. Jessica hurriedly wiped her eyes. "Come in." Michael Blackwood stood in the doorway, looking more casual than she had ever seen him, in dark jeans and a grey sweater rather than his usual impeccable suit. He carried a large gift bag and what appeared to be a take-out container. "I hope I'm not intruding," he said, his voice gentler than it ever was at the office. "I brought you some real food. Hospital cuisine leaves much to be desired." Jessica stared at him, acutely aware of her dishevelled appearance and the tears still damp on her cheeks. "You didn't have to do that," she managed. Michael set the food on the rolling table and moved it toward her bed. "It's just soup and a sandwich from Westfield Cafe. Nothing fancy." He glanced at Lily, who was still fussing at Jessica's breast. "Is everything all right?" Jessica felt her face flush with embarrassment. "I'm having trouble. She won't—" Fresh tears threatened. To her surprise, Michael didn't look uncomfortable or flee the room. Instead, he calmly took a seat in the visitor's chair. "My sister has 3 children," he said. "She struggled with breastfeeding too, especially with her first. The lactation consultant showed her a different position that worked better." Jessica looked at him in disbelief. This was not a conversation she had ever imagined having with her boss. "The lactation consultant isn't available until this afternoon." Michael pulled out his phone. "Let me call my sister. She might have some advice." Before Jessica could protest, he was speaking to his sister, explaining the situation with surprising ease. After a brief conversation, he turned back to Jessica. "She suggests trying the football hold position. May I?" He held out his hands for Lily. Something about his calm confidence made Jessica hand over her daughter. Michael carefully cradled Lily, then demonstrated how to position her like this, tucked under your arm like a football, with her feet toward your back and her head supported in your hand. Jessica followed his instructions, adjusting until Lily was positioned correctly. To her amazement, Lily latched immediately. "It worked," she whispered, looking up at Michael with gratitude. "Thank you." Michael smiled, a real smile that transformed his usually serious face. "My sister will be pleased her advice helped." He turned away slightly to give Jessica privacy while she fed her daughter. "Mr. Blackwood," Jessica began hesitantly. "Michael, please," he interrupted. "I think we're well past formalities at this point." Jessica nodded. "Michael, I want to apologize again for the text, and thank you for coming to check on me last night. That was unexpected." Michael was quiet for a moment. "We all need help sometimes," he finally said. "Even those of us who are used to handling everything alone." Something in his tone suggested he was speaking from experience. "Still, you're my boss. This isn't exactly in your job description." Michael leaned forward slightly. "Right now, I'm just a person helping another person. The company hierarchy doesn't apply here." Jessica studied him, wondering about the man behind the executive facade. "Why did you really come last night? You could have just called the hospital to check if I was okay." Michael seemed to consider his answer carefully. "Your message said you were alone. No one should be alone during something like that." He paused. "And perhaps I understand more than you might think about facing important moments without support." Before Jessica could ask what he meant, the door opened again. An older couple rushed in, her parents, Alan and Barbara Parker, having arrived earlier than expected. "Jessie!" her mother exclaimed, hurrying to the bedside. She stopped short when she noticed Michael. "Oh, I'm sorry. We didn't realize you had a visitor." Michael stood, extending his hand. "Michael Blackwood. I work with Jessica." Barbara shook his hand, confusion evident on her face. "Nice to meet you. I'm Barbara, Jessica's mother, and this is her father, Alan." An awkward silence fell over the room. Jessica could see the questions forming in her mother's eyes. Why was Jessica's boss visiting her in the hospital? Why had the nurses referred to him as the father when they had pointed them to Jessica's room? "Michael brought me some lunch," Jessica explained weakly, "and helped with a feeding issue." Alan's eyebrows shot up. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Blackwood." Michael handled the situation with diplomatic ease. Jessica is a valued member of our team at Blackwood Publishing. We take care of our own. He retrieved his coat. I should be going. You'll want family time. He turned to Jessica. Take all the time you need for maternity leave. Your job will be waiting when you're ready to return. As he headed for the door, Jessica called after him. Michael? He turned back. Thank you for everything. He nodded once, then left the room. Barbara immediately turned to her daughter. Jessica Claire Parker, what is going on? The nurse said your husband had been here all night, and now your boss shows up with lunch and helping with breastfeeding. And where is Michael, the baby's father? Jessica closed her eyes briefly, the weight of everything crashing down. It's complicated, Mum. Uncomplicated for us, her father said, his voice gentle but firm. Over the next hour, Jessica told her parents everything. About Donovan abandoning her, about accidentally texting her boss, about Michael Blackwood showing up at the hospital and being mistaken for Lily's father. By the end, Barbara was wiping away tears, and Alan's jaw was clenched in anger toward the man who had abandoned his daughter. So this CEO, he just came to check on you? Barbara asked. That seems unusual. Everything about this situation is unusual, Mom, Jessica sighed. But he was kind when he didn't have to be. Alan was still processing. What kind of man doesn't stand by the mother of his child? He muttered. If I ever meet this Donovan character. You won't, Jessica said firmly. He made his choice. Lily and I will be fine without him. Later that evening, after her parents had gone to their hotel, promising to return first thing in the morning, Jessica received a text from Michael. Is there anything you need that I can bring tomorrow? My sister suggested nursing tops might be helpful. Jessica smiled at the unexpected thoughtfulness. She hesitated, then replied, That's very kind, but my parents are here now. I should be fine. Thank you again for everything. His response came quickly. Good to hear. Remember, the offer of help stands regardless of your parents' presence. This isn't just about professional courtesy. Jessica stared at those last words, wondering what exactly they meant. As she looked down at Lily, sleeping peacefully in the hospital bassinet, she couldn't help but compare the two Michaels in her life. One who had run from responsibility and one who had run towards someone in need, even when it wasn't his responsibility at all. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or how she would face Michael Blackwood when she eventually returned to work. But for the first time since learning she was pregnant, Jessica felt like maybe, just maybe, everything might turn out all right. 6 weeks after Lily's birth, Jessica stood in front of her bathroom mirror, smoothing her blouse and scrutinizing her reflection. Today marked her first day back at Blackwood Publishing, and her stomach churned with anxiety. Her parents had returned to Arizona 2 weeks ago, leaving her to navigate new motherhood alone. Though they had offered to stay longer or have her move back home with them, Jessica had declined. Boston was her home now, and she was determined to make it work. She checked on Lily one last time before the babysitter arrived. The infant was sleeping peacefully, unaware of her mother's inner turmoil. Jessica had interviewed 5 different sitters before settling on Nancy, a retired nurse with decades of childcare experience. Still, leaving Lily felt like ripping off a limb. You can do this, Jessica whispered to herself as she gathered her purse and the breast pump she'd need during the day. Thousands of working mothers do this every day. When Jessica stepped off the elevator onto the editorial floor of Blackwood Publishing, several colleagues greeted her with warm smiles and congratulations. Her desk was decorated with balloons and a small gift basket. The normalcy of it all was comforting, as if her world hadn't completely transformed in the past few months. "Jessica, welcome back." Tara, a fellow editor, enveloped her in a hug. "We've missed you around here. How's the baby?" "She's perfect," Jessica smiled, pulling out her phone to show photos of Lily. "She's gorgeous," Tara gushed. "Those eyes and that little dimple." Jessica beamed with pride. "Thanks. It's been quite the adjustment, but we're figuring it out." Tara lowered her voice. "So, any word from the father?" Jessica tensed. Few people at work knew the full story of her situation. "No, and I don't expect any." Tara squeezed her arm sympathetically. "His loss." "You're amazing, and that baby is lucky to have you." As Jessica settled at her desk, she tried not to think about the last time she had seen Michael Blackwood. He had visited the hospital once more before she was discharged, bringing a car seat that his sister had insisted was the safest model available. The gesture had left Jessica both touched and confused. Since then, their communication had been limited to a few professional emails about her return to work. Jessica had just opened her first manuscript of the day when her phone buzzed with a text from Nancy. "Lily won't take the bottle. She's been crying for 30 minutes. Any suggestions?" A wave of panic washed over Jessica. She had practiced bottle feeding with Lily, but the baby had been inconsistent in her acceptance. Before she could respond, a shadow fell across her desk. Looking up, she found Michael Blackwood standing there, as imposing in his tailored suit as he had been the day she interviewed. "Welcome back, Mrs. Parker," he said, his voice professionally distant. "I hope you're settling in well." "Yes, thank you, Mr. Blackwood," Jessica replied quickly, locking her phone screen. "It's good to be back." Michael nodded. "I've adjusted your project load for the next few weeks. You'll be handling the Thompson manuscript exclusively until you're ready for more." "I appreciate that," Jessica said, surprised by the consideration. "My office at 2 to discuss your thoughts on it," he said, then walked away without waiting for a response. Jessica stared after him, puzzled by his return to formality after the personal connection they had shared in the hospital. It was as if those moments had never happened. By noon, Jessica was in the mother's room, pumping breast milk and frantically texting Nancy, who had finally gotten Lily to take the bottle after nearly 2 hours of resistance. The baby was now sleeping, exhausted from her protest. Jessica felt tears stinging her eyes. How was she supposed to focus on work when her heart was at home with her daughter? At 2 o'clock sharp, Jessica knocked on Michael's office door, manuscript notes in hand. "Come in," his deep voice called. Michael was standing by the window, gazing out at the Boston skyline. He turned as she entered, his expression unreadable. "Jessica," he said, using her first name despite their earlier formal exchange. "Please, sit." Jessica took a seat across from his desk, placing her notes between them. "I've reviewed the Thompson manuscript. It has potential, but the middle section drags considerably." Michael didn't sit or reach for her notes. Instead, he remained standing, studying her face. "You've been crying." Jessica blinked in surprise. I'm fine." "You're not fine," he stated simply. "What's wrong?" The direct question, asked with what seemed like genuine concern, broke through Jessica's carefully constructed professional facade. "Lily wouldn't take the bottle this morning," she admitted. "She cried for hours. The sitter finally got her to eat, but—" She trailed off, embarrassed by her emotional response. Michael's expression softened. "That must be difficult." "It is what it is," Jessica said, trying to regain her composure. "Many working mothers deal with this. Now, about the manuscript." "Jessica," Michael interrupted gently, "may I speak frankly?" She nodded, uncertain. "When my sister returned to work after having her first child, she was miserable for months," he said. "She tried to pretend everything was fine, that she could seamlessly transition back to her old life. It nearly broke her." Jessica swallowed hard. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that perhaps we need to reconsider your return-to-work plan." Michael moved to sit behind his desk. "What if you could work from home 3 days a week?" "A week?" "You'd come in for necessary meetings, but otherwise manage your projects remotely." Jessica just stared at him, dumbfounded. Would that even be possible?" Michael admitted, "We've never had such an arrangement before. But there's always a first time. You're a valuable editor, Jessica. I'd rather accommodate your needs than lose your talent." The question that had been plaguing her for weeks finally bubbled to the surface. "Why would you do this for me?" Jessica asked, unable to contain her curiosity any longer. Michael was quiet for what felt like a long moment, his gaze fixed somewhere beyond her. "6 years ago, my wife died giving birth to our son," he finally said, his voice steady, but she could hear the undercurrent of pain that laced each word. "He lived for 3 hours. I held them both as they slipped away." Jessica gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth. "Michael, I had no idea. I'm so sorry." "Few people know," he said, his voice low. "I don't discuss it." He looked directly at her, his eyes filled with a depth of emotion she couldn't ignore. "When I received your text that night, when I realized you were alone at such a critical moment, I couldn't not respond." The revelation stunned Jessica into silence, the pieces of the puzzle suddenly snapping into place. His unexpected appearance at the hospital, his gentle way with Lily, his sister's unsolicited advice about breastfeeding, it all made perfect sense now. This wasn't just professional courtesy or some random act of kindness. This was a man who truly understood loss and isolation in a way that very few others could ever comprehend. Michael continued when she didn't speak, his voice soft. "I didn't mean to burden you with my history. I simply wanted you to understand that my offer comes from a place of genuine concern, not some kind of corporate strategy." Jessica nodded, still trying to process this startling new information. "Thank you for telling me, and for the offer. I'd like to try the arrangement if you're serious." "I am," he confirmed, his gaze unwavering. "We'll start next week. For the remainder of this week, just wrap up what you need to here and prepare to work from home." A wave of relief washed over Jessica, easing the tension she hadn't even realized she was carrying. "Thank you, Michael. This means more than I can possibly express." As she stood to leave, Michael spoke again, his voice hesitant. "Jessica, there's something else." He hesitated, looking uncharacteristically uncertain, a flicker of something akin to apprehension in his eyes. "I received a letter yesterday addressed to the company. It was from Michael Donovan." Jessica froze, her hand gripping the back of the chair so tightly her knuckles turned white. "What? Why would he contact Blackwood Publishing?" Michael's expression hardened, his jaw tightening. "It seems he's been trying to reach you." "Your number's changed and your old apartment has new tenants. He tracked you down through your employer. He claims he wants to meet his daughter." The room seemed to tilt precariously around Jessica, throwing her off balance. After 6 months of complete silence, after telling me to just take care of the problem, now he wants to play daddy, Michael said firmly, his voice leaving no room for argument. You don't have to see him, Jessica. You don't owe him anything. Jessica struggled to keep her voice from trembling. What did the letter say exactly? Michael reached into his desk drawer and pulled out an envelope, his movements deliberate. Read it yourself. I haven't responded to it yet. Jessica took the letter, her fingers trembling so violently she could barely hold it steady. Michael Donovan's handwriting was as familiar as it was unwelcome, a ghost from a past she desperately wanted to bury. The letter was surprisingly brief, expressing regret for his hasty and callous reaction, and claiming that he had spent the last several months away soul-searching and re-evaluating his priorities. He wrote that he desperately wanted to meet Lily and discuss support arrangements for her future. Support arrangements? Jessica repeated, her voice laced with bitterness and disbelief. Now that she's actually here, healthy and real, he wants to swoop in and play the hero? She looked up at Michael, her eyes searching for guidance. What do you think I should do? Michael leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. That's not for me to say, but I will offer this observation. Sometimes people genuinely deserve second chances, and sometimes they definitely don't. Jessica folded the letter carefully and slipped it into her pocket, her mind racing. I need some time to think about this. Take all the time you need, Michael said, his voice reassuring. And Jessica, whatever you ultimately decide, you're not alone in this anymore. The words hung in the air between them, laden with a significance that went far beyond simple professional support. For the first time since Lily's birth, Jessica felt a flutter of something other than the familiar anxieties or bone-deep exhaustion that had become her constant companions. It was something warm and completely unexpected, a spark of hope that made her breath catch in her throat. That evening, as Jessica gently rocked Lily to sleep in her arms, her thoughts kept drifting back to Michael Blackwood, to his deeply personal revelation, his unwavering kindness, and his unexpected support. The Michael she was slowly but surely getting to know was a vastly different person from the intimidating and unapproachable CEO she had once feared and tried to avoid at all costs. And as for the other Michael, the one who had shattered her heart and so carelessly abandoned his child, she pulled out the letter again, reading it even more carefully this time, scrutinizing every word and nuance. Between the carefully crafted lines of Donovan's insincere and carefully worded apology, Jessica sensed calculation rather than genuine remorse or a heartfelt desire to connect with his child. He had subtly but deliberately mentioned legal rights and paternal claims right alongside his proclaimed desire to meet Lily. The implicit threat was clear. If Jessica didn't cooperate with his plans, he might pursue other avenues, legal or otherwise, to forcibly insert himself into their lives. Jessica's arms tightened protectively around her sleeping daughter, a fierce protectiveness rising within her. How quickly life could change in the blink of an eye. In a mere 6 months, she had gone from a woman betrayed and utterly alone to a mother fiercely determined to protect her precious child. And surprisingly, she now had unexpected allies standing firmly in her corner. Whatever Michael Donovan's true motives were, and whatever challenges lay ahead for them, one thing was now unequivocally certain. Jessica Parker was no longer facing them all alone. 3 days later, Jessica found herself sitting in a quiet corner of Riverside Cafe, her hands wrapped tightly around a mug of tea that had long since gone cold, the lukewarm liquid doing little to soothe her frayed nerves. Across from her, Michael Donovan fidgeted nervously with his paper napkin, his once familiar face now seeming like that of a complete stranger, a mask of someone she used to know. After an awkward silence, Jessica finally spoke, her voice carefully controlled. "She has your eyes," she said quietly, sliding a professionally printed photo of Lily across the small table toward him. She had deliberately chosen to meet him without bringing her daughter along. Whatever his intentions might be, Lily would absolutely not be a part of this initial conversation. Michael reached out and picked up the photo, studying it with an expression that Jessica couldn't quite decipher, his eyes traveling over every inch of the image. "She's beautiful," he murmured, his voice low and husky. Jessica interrupted him, her voice steady and unwavering. "You don't have any right." He had the decency to actually look ashamed, his eyes dropping to the tabletop. "I was scared, unprepared. I handled everything terribly, and I am genuinely sorry for that," Jessica asked, the question that had been keeping her awake for countless nights. "Why now? Why, after all this time?" Michael Donovan shifted uncomfortably in his seat, avoiding her direct gaze. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about family, about responsibility. My brother just had a kid, and seeing him with his son—" His voice trailed off, as if he was searching for the right words. "I realized what I was missing, what I threw away, what I walked away from." Jessica studied the man she had once naively thought she loved with all her heart, searching for any sign of genuine sincerity. His explanation sounded carefully rehearsed and disturbingly hollow. "And the mentions of legal rights in your letter, was that thinking about family too?" His expression hardened almost imperceptibly, a flicker of annoyance crossing his features. "I'm Lily's father. I have rights," Jessica reminded him, her voice cold and devoid of any warmth. "Rights you essentially forfeited when you callously suggested I take care of the problem. Rights aren't just legal concepts, Michael. They're earned through consistent presence, through unwavering care, through actually showing up when it truly matters." Before he could formulate a response, Jessica's phone buzzed softly with a text message alert. She glanced down to see a message from Michael Blackwood. "Checking in. Everything all right?" A small, involuntary smile touched her lips as she read the message. Since their deeply personal conversation in his office, Michael had become a steady and reassuring presence in her life, offering a unique blend of professionalism and personal support. He was always respectful of boundaries, yet unfailingly supportive whenever she needed it most. He had never pushed or presumed anything. He simply offered quiet strength and unwavering encouragement when she was feeling overwhelmed. Noting her subtle change in expression, Donovan asked, his voice laced with suspicion, "Someone important?" "Yes," Jessica said simply, returning her full attention to him. "Look, I won't keep Lily from knowing her father if you're genuinely committed to being a positive presence in her life, but I need to know your true intentions up front. No games, no threats, no hidden agendas." Donovan's carefully constructed facade cracked slightly, revealing a glimpse of the man she remembered. "I'm not the villain you're making me out to be. I panicked. Yes, I made a terrible mistake, but I genuinely want to make it right." He leaned forward, his voice softening. "And I've been thinking about us too, Jess. What we had was good. Maybe we could—" "No," Jessica cut him off firmly, her voice leaving no room for argument or negotiation. That door is closed permanently. There is no us anymore. His expression darkened, a hint of anger flashing in his eyes. Is there someone else? Jessica didn't answer his question directly, choosing instead to focus on what truly mattered. My top priority, above everything else, is Lily. If you genuinely want to be a part of her life, we'll need a formal legal agreement outlining a specific visitation schedule, child support payments, everything carefully documented and legally binding, complete transparency and accountability. You don't trust me, he observed, his voice flat. You haven't earned my trust, she replied evenly, her gaze unwavering. But I'm willing to give you the opportunity to build it for Lily's sake. After Donovan finally left, Jessica remained at the cafe for a while, her emotions swirling within her like a turbulent storm. She picked up her phone and texted Michael Blackwood. Meeting finished. Could really use a friend right now. 20 minutes later, Michael Blackwood walked confidently through the cafe door, his tall and imposing figure immediately commanding attention, even in casual clothes. He quickly spotted Jessica sitting alone at her table and made his way directly to her, sliding into the seat across from her. "How did it go?" he asked, without any preamble, his eyes filled with genuine concern. Jessica recounted the entire conversation, watching Michael's expression darken noticeably when she mentioned Donovan's audacious suggestion about rekindling their past relationship. "And what will you do now?" Michael asked, his voice carefully neutral when she had finished her story. Jessica said, her voice firm, "I'll have my lawyer draft a formal visitation and child support agreement, starting with limited supervised visits until he proves that he can be a consistently reliable and positive influence in her life." Michael nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "A sensible approach, all things considered." He hesitated for a moment, then added, "And about his other suggestion." Jessica met his gaze directly, leaving no room for misinterpretation. "As I told him, that door is permanently closed. There's no possibility of reconciliation." Something subtle shifted in Michael's eyes, perhaps a hint of relief, or perhaps something even deeper and more significant. "Jessica," he began, then stopped abruptly, seeming to search for the right words to express his thoughts. "I know," Jessica said softly, a gentle smile gracing her lips. "Me too." Their hands found each other across the small table, a simple and understated touch that somehow felt more intimate and meaningful than any words could ever express. 6 months later, the vibrant autumn leaves had transformed the bustling city of Boston into a breathtaking canvas of fiery reds and shimmering golds. Jessica stood contentedly in her cozy kitchen, busily preparing dinner while Lily happily played in her high chair, babbling and gurgling with delight as she enthusiastically explored a set of colorful stacking blocks. The familiar sound of a key turning in the lock made both of them instinctively look up toward the doorway. "Da!" Lily squealed with pure joy, her favorite new word tumbling from her lips. Michael Blackwood entered the apartment, his typically serious and focused work expression immediately melting into a warm and genuine smile at the sight of them both. He hung his coat carefully on the nearby rack and crossed the room to Lily, lifting her effortlessly into his arms with practiced ease and affection. "Hello, Princess," he murmured softly, kissing her chubby cheek. "Did you have a good day with Mama?" Jessica watched them, her heart overflowing with a profound sense of contentment and gratitude. The past year had brought about changes in her life that she never could have possibly imagined or predicted. Michael Donovan had faithfully kept up his monthly scheduled visitations with Lily for approximately 3 months before his initial burst of enthusiasm began to noticeably wane, and his visits became increasingly sporadic and inconsistent. His last cancellation had come with a job offer in Seattle, Washington, along with a somewhat arrogant and entitled request to formally modify the visitation agreement to quarterly visits at best, citing the immense distance. Meanwhile, Michael Blackwood had gradually but undeniably become an integral and constant presence in both of their lives. First as a supportive and understanding friend, then, unexpectedly, as something far more profound and meaningful. Their relationship had developed slowly and organically, with both of them being exceedingly careful not to rush things prematurely, given the obvious complexities involved. But the undeniable and undeniable connection between them had been palpable and undeniable from that fateful night in the hospital when they first met. It was a unique bond forged in the crucible of a profound crisis that had deepened steadily over time into something truly genuine and undeniably lasting. "How was your meeting today?" Jessica asked, as Michael came over to kiss her gently, Lily still balanced comfortably on his hip. "Productive," he replied, his eyes sparkling with happiness. "The board officially approved the expansion project. But more importantly, I had a rather significant thought on the way home." He carefully set Lily back down in her high chair and reached into his pocket, producing a small, elegant velvet box. "This isn't exactly how I had originally planned to do this," he confessed, a sheepish grin spreading across his face. "I had rather elaborate ideas involving the place where we first properly met, the hospital, but—" Jessica laughed softly, tears already welling up in her eyes. Michael continued, opening the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring that sparkled brilliantly in the warm light. "But I realized that the perfect moment isn't really about the location at all. It's about being surrounded by the people who make your life truly worth living, the people you simply can't imagine being without." He knelt down beside her, his eyes locking onto hers with unwavering intensity. "Jessica Parker, will you and Lily do me the extraordinary and immeasurable honor of officially, permanently, and wonderfully becoming my family?" Jessica looked from the dazzling ring to Michael's hopeful and loving face, then to Lily, who was watching them with bright, curious eyes, completely unaware of the significance of the moment. It was her precious daughter who had inadvertently brought this remarkable man into their lives through a mistaken text message sent on a rainy night that now seemed both like yesterday and like a distant lifetime ago. "Yes," Jessica whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, to family. Yes, to us." "Absolutely yes." As Michael slipped the sparkling ring onto her finger and gathered both her and Lily into his loving embrace, Jessica marveled at the unexpected twists and turns of life. How the very worst moments could ultimately lead to the very best, how even the most devastating mistakes could somehow transform into the most extraordinary miracles, and how finding true and lasting love could be as simple and as profoundly life-changing as sending a message to the right wrong person at exactly the right time.